Welcome to a roundtable hosted by National Flavors and Bonnie and Don Flavors. My name is Lisa Jackson, and I'll be one of your moderators today. Thank you for taking time to join our conversation, where we will be discussing tactics for finding and using certified organic flavors. We'll also be sharing ideas for how you can navigate your way through some of the complications and complexities that occur when you're launching organic foods and beverages in North America. Before I introduce our panelists, we have a few housekeeping reminders. Please use the Q&A feature to submit your questions since I've disabled the chat function. We'll take questions throughout the session, so submit them as you have them. In fact, you'll see that the discussion is structured around questions that we received prior to today's discussion. And I will email you a recording of the discussion within 24 hours. Let's meet our panelists. If I can get this to advance, there we go. Our team of regulatory experts includes Gwen Buffinga, Regulatory Manager with National Flavors. Gwen supports customers with deep understanding of regulations from the FDA, USDA, OSHA, and many other domestic and international governmental and societal organizations. Her flavor solutions experience includes product prototyping and applications, nutritional analysis, and analytical chemistry. Gwen's bachelor's degree from Western Michigan in dietetics and clinical nutrition services includes a chemistry focus. She's also completed secondary courses at the American Institute of Baking and the Barry Callebaut Chocolate Academy. Sheila Goldsmith, Regulatory Coordinator with Bonnie and Don Flavors, also joins us today. Sheila's experience in quality assurance and regulatory affairs spans 19 years with several flavor producers. She shares her knowledge about Canadian food and drug regulations for labeling flavors and the Canadian organic regulations with our team and customers. Sheila has led many initiatives for Bonnie and Don, including implementing the FSSC 22000 program, and she continues to expand her regulatory knowledge. Thank you both for sharing your knowledge with us today. Please welcome our flavor experts, Rebecca Davis and Sandra Wilson. Rebecca has been creating delicious food and beverage tastes for more than 10 years. She has deep experience with sweet flavors as well as savory flavor training and a focus on beverage applications that includes developing TTB-approved flavors for alcohols. Her undergraduate degree in chemistry and Master of Science in Organic Chemistry from Northern Kentucky University involve research to develop an efficient procedure for synthesizing aromatic compounds. Sandra Wilson has been part of the Bonnie and Don Flavors team for 17 years. As technical manager, Sandra is responsible, we just decided to change pages there. Hang on, there we go. Sandra is the technical manager responsible for R&D, quality assurance, and regulatory, as well as applications. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Trent University and is a certified flavorist with the Society of Flavor Chemists. Thank you both for sharing your expertise today. And here are our, I'm having a hard time. There we go. Here are our moderators. You've already met me, technologically challenged a little bit today. I support National Flavors marketing and communication efforts. My experience centers in marketing strategy, development, and execution informed by consumer insights. I've worked for several food and beverage companies, both branded and private brand, serving retail and food service customers. Ken Hellman with Bonnie and Don has worked in the flavor industry for over 35 years. He began his career in 1986 at Givaudan, working in various sales roles within the Canadian operation, spending 10 years as Director of Sales and Marketing, until leaving the organization in 2012. Over the past 10 years, he's worked for regional flavor companies, and since 2015 has served as the Director of Marketing and Business Development for Bonnie and Don. His experience covers the majority of food categories, where he's helped customers navigate their way through product development challenges from concept creation to market launch. And his passion lies in helping clients master those hurdles and create truly unique consumer preferred products. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. Before we review the trends within the North American organic food and beverage market, I'd like to take a quick poll. So thinking about your current launch plans, what slows you down the most in getting your organic products to market? Is it finding the form and flavor concepts that help you outpace competitors? Is it vaulting the hurdles to source organic ingredients? Is it navigating the regulatory maze for flavors? Is it crossing the formulation gauntlet? Or it may be something else that I haven't mentioned here. Or you may have already conquered the maze, made it through the obstacle course and had success. So I'm going to launch that poll and let us know what you think, what your experience has been. Just take a minute there to answer that for me. So far, vaulting the hurdles is in the lead. The regulatory maze is coming in second. Finding the right form and flavor is third. We're still thinking about it. Sourcing is number one so far. Oh, got a few people struggling to cross the formulation gauntlet. And I have one person that's mastered the maze with ease, with no issues. All right. Okay, let's see if I can. Looks like I have, oops, nope, still more votes coming in. One moment. All right, let's go ahead and end polling. And we'll share results. And so you can see that vaulting the hurdles to find organic ingredients is the #1 challenge people are facing right now, followed by the regulatory maze, a few with the formulation gauntlet, and a few looking for new ideas. So thank you for that. Thank you for taking the time to answer that. It gives us good context for where the discussion should lead today. Let me go ahead and close that. You know, although we know that the ideas, form and flavor, isn't something that you're facing collectively, we know that it still remains a challenge. And so we wanted to share some market and flavor insights that may guide your efforts. The North American center store launch activity in organic food and beverages has ticked up fairly steadily, achieving a 9% compound annual growth rate over the last decade. The role of organics in new product activity is also becoming larger, representing almost 1/4 of 2020 launches. Although the percentage of launches across the US and Canada will vary from year to year, it's important to note that we've seen activity in Canada pick up in the last 3 years. So organics now account for roughly 27% of new product activity in center store, compared to 22% in the US. So this launch data represents one of the tools you can use to map your way to growth within organic food and beverages. When we look more closely, if I can make my screen advance. There we go. When we look more closely at the center store categories that are relevant to organics, we found that about 80% of organic launches in 2020 fell into about a dozen categories, those that are shown here. And the activity in those categories is similar across the US and Canada with a few exceptions. You'll see that Canada has more activity as a percent of total in organic seasonings and dressings, although launches in the US ramped up significantly in the last year. Organic snacks also got more attention in the US, specifically the snack, cereal, and energy bar subcategory, which saw launch activity up 18%. And in Canada, we saw nutritional drinks accounting for more launches, with significantly more kombucha products hitting the shelves. Within that all other group where you see another gap, the difference reflects more organic new product activity in the US across categories like alcoholic beverages, desserts and ice cream, meals, juice drinks, soup, and ready-to-drink coffee and tea. So when we start this kind of exploration, we identify the key categories and subcategories to focus on. We like to dig a little bit deeper to understand the flavor profiles that align with organic launches. And I took the two subcategories where we saw some differences, one of which is the snack, cereal, and energy bar market. We know that segment offers a lot of flavors, and you see this ranking here. This accounts for about 1/3 of launch activity in the last 3 years. I guess it's not surprising that sweet indulgent flavors top the leaderboard. You see variations of chocolate in either milk or dark varieties, alone or upscaled with other flavors, representing about half of the flavor profiles on this list, and they represented almost 1/4 of total launches in the category. So if you're planning to enter the snack bar market, these are the core flavors to consider for your assortment. We review not only this, but also emerging flavors to get additional insight. And in 2020, these new tastes launched. So you see there's a little bit more complexity in the flavor profile, along with the entry of some functional ingredients paired with traditional flavors, in part to reduce the risk of trial among people who might not know what flax or hemp would taste like. But most people enjoy a good peanut butter bar, and so that helps get trial. If I use the same lens for nutritional beverages within the Canadian market where we saw that gap, this category actually has two subsegments. Nutritional drinks, where the core flavors that you see here account for about 85% of total launches. You see that vanilla and chocolate variations represent about a third of the activity. Now, total launches in this subsegment aren't up year over year, but we looked for additional insights, and we saw there are pockets of interesting activity. You see some flavor combinations starting to emerge, as well as global influences taking hold. Now, the other subsegment within nutritional beverages, we already talked about this kombucha. Over the last 3 years, here are the leading flavors launched in this subsegment. And you see that the focus is on fruit flavors, but that ginger is a popular flavor profile, either as a standalone or in combination with both familiar and more functional ingredients like turmeric. So in addition to watching launch activity, we find inspiration for innovation through several other tactics, like market sweeps. We'll bring in a variety of new products to taste and evaluate, and I'm not sure which day is my favorite. If it's ice cream day or candy day, they're both pretty good. But now that we're working remotely, we often use platforms like Google Search Trends or Pinterest to track the kind of flavors that people are searching for underneath the umbrella of organic. We get some insights that way. Our teams are also a really valuable resource. So we talk to sales, marketing, R&D to see what they've explored and to bring any news to our development sessions. It's always worth talking to your customers, listening to your customers, as well as your supplier partners for additional learning. So we've seen that we've increased launch activity in organic food and beverage, but at the end of the day, it really comes down to what kind of impact that has on revenue. So when we look at sales data from the organic trade associations in the US and Canada, we still see that steady uptick in sales of organic food and beverages. 2020 did see a jump up. So we saw 8% growth in organic sales in Canada and 14% in the US. Now this data, unlike the launch data, which was focused on center store, this data is holistic. So it includes the perimeter, the fruits and vegetables, and those other categories that Mintel doesn't currently track. The drivers of growth. I mean, we know we have increased distribution within traditional retail outlets. We also see an expansion into more categories. Mintel tracks 162 center store subcategories. In 2001, organic claims surfaced in 92 of those, or about 58% of the total. Last year, organic products launched in 130 categories. That's a jump of more than 40%. And it gives organic products about 80% penetration in the center store. But even with the strong growth trends that you see here and the manufacturer focus on innovation, organic food and beverage only represents about 4% of US food sales and 3.2% of sales in Canada. So digging into why the frequency of organic food and beverage purchasing isn't as robust as the efforts to bring more options to consumers is a really helpful avenue for both developers and marketers. There was a study done in November of 2020 by the Journal of Retailing and Consumer Services that showed that consumer motivation to buy organic extends beyond just a positive attitude about it. Results show that purchases are higher among consumers who recognize or believe that organic options reflect their personal values or their goals. A key motivation is the belief that organics will help them protect the health of themselves, their health, and their family, as well as the environment. Purchasing organics reflects a sense of duty and a desire for personal achievement. Many people buy organic foods as a result of peer influence too, and they want to avoid any negative consequences of consuming or being seen with non-organic foods. So there's a social status implication of their decision to buy. Importantly, consumers are more likely to buy organics when they understand organic labeling and they trust the certification process. Now, interestingly, this study didn't examine taste expectations, and it may be because we know that taste is essential to getting repeat purchase. No matter how compelling your concept is, if you don't deliver against the taste, you know you're not going to get a repeat buy. The study is worth a read because it does uncover some relatively unknown and unexamined challenges when bringing organic products to retail. I have the study sourced in the footnotes, and I'll make sure that you have a link to it as well. So what does 2021 hold for organic products? Well, industry forecasters, they still anticipate additional growth. We're going to see launch activity continue to ramp up. We're going to see more categories continue to have organic options. But we're facing unknowns about potential product shortages, currency fluctuations, and we do have uncertain consumer confidence right now. So no one is putting any numbers into print yet. For now then, launching your organic products successfully may center more on building consumer interest. So that means making sure your product is on shelf, messaging your value proposition, maybe finding influencers to support your product and give positive word of mouth about it, and including resources both on pack and online that build consumer trust in the certification process. And that leads us to the next part of our session, the regulatory landscape for organics in North America. I'm going to turn it over to Ken to lead this part of the discussion. So Ken, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thanks so much for sharing all that, I think, useful information as it relates to what the market is for organic right now. It's certainly a growing area within the food segment and continues to grow quite nicely. I think what we'd like to talk about now is the regulatory landscape between Canada and the US, and there is slight differences to the two. So what I'd like to do is pass it off to Gwen right now and ask her what that landscape as it relates to regulatory looks like in the US.
Sure, thanks, Ken. Yeah, so in 2014, the Organic Trade Association petitioned the National Organic Program to relook at flavors and their listing on the National List of Ingredients. 4 years later, in 2018, NLP finalized a new rule. We in the industry refer to that rule as the Organic Flavor Annotation. And under that new rule, organic compliant flavors could still be used. However, now the manufacturer has to prove that an organic version is not commercially available before they're able to use that.
And so Gwen, I'm going to interrupt you because you're fading in and out a little bit.
Okay. So commercial availability is defined as the ability to obtain an appropriate ingredient either in form, quality, or quantity. And NLP specifically says that price cannot be a consideration to prove that it's commercially unavailable. So in 2019, December 27th, it actually went into effect. So we now all have the privilege of working under this new rule for about a year.
So
okay.
Thanks so much, Gwen. Sandra, Sheila, what does the landscape look like in Canada?
In Canada, it's actually a lot less challenging. The flavor either needs to be organic certified or it can be organic compatible. When we say organic compatible, it has to meet the requirements of organic, but does not necessarily have to be organic certified.
All right, thank you so much. I think what we're going to move into now is how does the organic labeling vary between North America, in North America, between Canada and the US, because there are different classifications of organic in both countries. So Gwen, maybe you could explain to us the nuances of the organic regulations in the US.
Sure. So those first 3 columns you see there, those all require certification. So they would all require you to submit your finished product to your certifying body, whoever that may be. That 4th column does not require a certification. That would just be if you were, using less than 70% of an organic ingredient total. So you could list, in your ingredient statement that you were using an organic sugar or organic flour, or something like that. Kind of starting on the left, you would be required to use 100% of organic ingredients. All of the ingredients you would use would also need to be 100% organic certified. So that really would require a very lean list of ingredients. It would include processing aids. Those would have to be 100% organic. So, most of I would say most of the products we see in the US that would be multi-ingredient would fall under that second organic category. This requires it to be at least 95% using certified organic products. It does allow that 5% to use some ingredients that are on the national list that are advised by the NOP, some gums, some carriers. That's kind of where the organic compliant flavors would fall, but you can only use 5% of that. Those 5% would have to be non-GMO, non-irradiated, not from sewage sludge, and then, not really contain synthetic solvents or preservatives. And then that third category, that's if you're using at least 70% certified organic. You're not allowed to use that organic USDA seal with that, but you can, go ahead and claim that you're using, at least the 70%.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Sheila, what does it look like as far as labeling requirements in Canada?
Let me see if I can, there we go.
Thank you. Very similar to the US, with the exception that we cannot make the 100% organic claim. Anything 95% and above would be certified organic. And this is the only time that the organic seal or logo can be displayed on the product. When we have something between 70 and 95%, we would then just claim the percent of the certified ingredient containing product in that finished product. And with the last column, it's just a declaration of the organic ingredients that are used in the product.
Okay, thank you so much. We're going to move into the next slide, which is, and the next challenge that we can run into, which is, what are the steps necessary to certify an organic flavor that isn't commercially available? What might those steps be, Gwen, in the US?
Yeah, so it's become quite a cumbersome process. So to prove that something's not commercially available, you'll have to test 3 versions of an organic version. So, if you wanted a strawberry flavor, for instance, you wouldn't be able to just say, we can't find a strawberry flavor. You would have to search through your supply chain or through other avenues to try to find 3 strawberry flavors that were organic certified from various flavor houses. And you would have to test those in your product to prove that the form, the quality, or the quantity available in market is not sufficient to work for your product. In addition to that, you'll have to document all of those steps that you're taking to verify to your certifying body that you're taking those steps. And annually that will have to be reviewed.
And what's the situation like, Sheila, in Canada?
In Canada, we don't have to look for a commercial availability in organic flavors. We can't, because we can use organic compatible flavors. We would only look to that for ingredients within the flavor. Then we would have to do commercial availability for the ingredients in our flavor in order to certify it. But the flavor itself does not need to be commercially available or inorganic.
Okay.
So we did get a question from the audience on this as you were both explaining it, and the question is, how much, in the launch schedule, how much time do you need to allow for this search process in either place, the U.S. or Canada?
Yeah, I know for the U.S. It's taken us some time just to be able to find those organic versions of different ingredients or raw materials. Like Sheila said, we also have to do kind of the same process for all of our flavor ingredients that we're putting into our finished product. So I think the US and Canada is really similar in that aspect. But I would say, you really need, if you have a good relationship with, one of your supply chain, it may be a little bit easier to track those down, but, the search could be, a month or so to be able to get the samples in, test them in your finished product, make sure that they, have a valid reason of not working or working, and then, kind of getting your product launched.
Okay, we just got another question and it says, EU law also requires the 95-5 formula structure for organics. Do either of you see anything else in EU rules regarding organic that might affect North America in the near future?
Yeah, so the UK just rolled out an equivalency program at the beginning of the year with the US, which was great because it had left because of Brexit, it had left the UK kind of hanging on what was that equivalency going to be. The EU has an equivalency program that is in effect until 2025. So nothing will change until 2025. There has been talk that at that point it will be more of a member state rather than a full EU EU member standard umbrella. So that would be kind of unique to track that. But the UK did introduce this equivalency program. So that was a great step to really align. So as long as the country of manufacture, in this case the US, is in compliance with certified flavor, it would also be allowed to be used in a EU organic product.
Okay, and Sheila, the same applies for Canada?
In Canada, we do have a EU Canada equivalence. So you would get that certification through your organic CB, and you would be certified to the EU organic equivalence based on that.
Okay. Very good. Those are the only questions that came in, Ken.
Okay, thank you so much. The next question we have, challenge is, under what conditions can manufacturers make a non-availability claim? In that particular case, what might it be?
Yeah, so it would, be something where if you were using a powdered flavor, going back to, that strawberry example, if you were using a powdered strawberry flavor and you weren't able to find that in a powdered form, that would be enough to say it. If the amount that you're using isn't available, so if your manufacturer isn't able to provide, there's some raw materials that are a little bit harder to get organically. I know Sandra and Rebecca are going to touch on, some of the sourcing challenges a little bit later, but sometimes if you aren't able to source that ingredient to make up that flavor, that would be a great, solution to say, this isn't available. I need to use an organic compliant. And then just the quality of it. If it, doesn't match what you really are targeting as a manufacturer, you can simply state that, and that would be sufficient as well.
And are the situations somewhat similar, Sheila, in Canada? Or
Well,
not
in
really?
Canada, non-availability is not an issue just because we can use organic compatible as far as organic certified flavors go.
Okay. Just curious, as it relates to regulatory steps, should a manufacturer want to sell across border, Gwen, what steps they might have to take to do something like that?
Yeah, so like Sheila mentioned, when you want to kind of take part in the equivalency programs, there's a lot of countries that have equivalency programs, which is a really nice thing, because you can, make international products. You would just go ahead and tell your certifier that you wanted to ship something to the EU or, kind of Canada and the US has a equivalency program. So you would just tell your organic certifier that you wanted to ship product to Canada. They would kind of do their steps and it would make it allowable to be able to cross borders into those other countries.
Okay. And so basically the same thing, Sheila, in Canada?
Yes, the same thing. There's a US Canada organic equivalency program, and your organic CB, you would just notify them and they'd include that in your certification.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We did get one more question that came in. Actually, two more. It says, can we still list organic ingredients in the ingredient section of our product, even if it has less than 70% total?
In the US, you can in your ingredient statement, you would, be able to go ahead and list it as organic sugar or whatever ingredient. You just wouldn't be able to make those organic claims.
Okay.
That would be the same for Canada as well.
Okay. And one more question. It says, how long does the process take to get a flavor certified organic?
So for us, when we submit a flavor, it takes at least 30 days. So we always advise, that usually we can get it certified, by that 30 days, but we always like to tell our customers that, it could take up to, 2 months, depending on what the need is.
For Canada, we would take about 10 days, 5 to 10 business days. We like to say 10, but we often get it in less than that time. So
You're in secret, Sir Sheila.
yeah, they're great organic certifiers. So
Okay, understood. That was all. That was the last two questions I received, Ken.
Okay, great. I think the next slide that we have is just allowing the audience some resources as it relates to links to various sites to get more information on organic compliance and regulation. I know that the CFIA has a complete list of certifying bodies as it relates to organics, and a couple of those would be things like our companies like the EcoCert and Oregon Tilth in the US, and the Quality Assurance International is another governing body. Oregon Tilth only certifies organic in the US. They do not do Canada. So if you're Canadian, you'd probably be looking at someone like EcoCert as one of those bodies.
Okay, and we can add those links to those organizations on this before I send out the deck.
Okay, excellent. That'd be fantastic.
Okay.
So I think that the next section of our organic webinar, Lisa, I'll hand it back to you to just talk about the delivering delicious results.
Yes, we're actually going to turn this over to our flavor experts to answer a few questions that came in from the audience prior to. And so the first question for both Sandra and Rebecca is, I have a natural flavor that needs to go into an organic claim food product. What do I do next? Rebecca, do you want to start with the US perspective?
Sure. Yeah. So the first thing you're going to need to do is go to your flavor supplier and ask them to convert that natural flavor to an organic status. This can sometimes impact your flavor impact because we have to, in the US, fit that 95-5 rule to get certified. So that means that 95% of the flavor and up to 100 needs to be organic. So this can affect costs and a couple of other things. But in the long run, it will take a couple months to certify it, or at best 30 days if we're lucky. And then that would be the next thing of getting we could send you then your certified organic flavor.
Okay. All right. And Sandra, what about within Canada? How does it work there?
It's pretty much the same within Canada. In some cases, as a flavor supplier, we might need to look at changing the solvent or possibly some of the flavor materials within the flavor to be compatible with the organic regulations.
Okay, and your time frame to do that?
It just depends on the workload in the lab.
That's a very fair answer. Thank you. So we had taken a look at two different product labels, one with sort of a conventional recipe for a chewy granola bar and the other an organic version. So Sandra or Rebecca or both, could you talk a little bit about the implications for our customers who are developing product as they're trying to do this kind of conversion? Rebecca, do you want to start?
Sure. So again, in the US, that conversion has to be 95 even for the product. And you can see Lisa has nicely highlighted everything and color coded it. So you can see the asterisks on the bottom one are indicating anything that is organic now. And so you'll see they had to convert from the majority of that, which the main ingredient being the whole grain oats there, to organic, and then having to kind of change the rest of the formula as well to meet that 95.5. So basically there are only a few ingredients within the entire thing that is not organic, and that would be the sea salt, the glycerin, basically baking soda, but basically everything else in that formula and their product had to be converted, including the flavor, to organic. So you would have to source all those ingredients organically.
And Sandra, do you get this kind of question often where someone has a conventional item that they want to transform into organic, or do they usually start from the ground up?
We get both cases. So in some cases, we have a natural flavor that needs to be, or a natural food product that needs to be switched to organic, and vice versa. So
Okay. And is there any difference between an organic ingredient and a certified organic ingredient? Or is that nomenclature?
I think it's pretty much the same for both.
Okay. Okay. That was a question from the audience. Let me see if I can fade it. Whoops. Sorry, go back up one. Here was another question that came in before the webinar. How can I maintain flavor intensity when using an organic flavor option? Sandra, could you tackle this one?
Yep. Unfortunately, when creating organic flavors, we're limited to which solvents we can use for certain water and oil soluble flavors. So some options for formulators may be to increase the dosage of the flavor or adjust the ingredients that they use in their base formulation.
So you faded out a little bit. I heard the base formula.
Yeah, so customers would have to play a little bit with their, as you showed in the last slide, play with their ingredients in their base to bring out some of the more intense flavor
I see. Okay.
Yeah, I'll try to help her out there. It's the same in the US too. So if you couldn't hear, basically sometimes you'll have to alter your base to help impact the flavor, because we have to fit that 95 rule. So a lot of times we have to weaken the flavor, or the flavor becomes less impactful to use it at your current use rate. So you could either just increase the use rate of the flavor in your product, or maybe switch around your product, maybe add more salt, depending on the flavor could impact the flavor. So you'd have to play around with your base, whatever that base may be, if it's a granola bar, ice cream, alcohol, beverage, to kind of help impact the flavor, or just increase the flavor use rate altogether.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Another question we received is, how can I get an organic flavor that tastes like cotton candy, or is a flavor that uses difficult to source ingredients like rose? Sandra, will you take this one to start?
Sure. Cotton candy, as an example, is what we call a fantasy flavor. So it wouldn't, it doesn't appear in nature. So we would create the organic flavor using organic ingredients and calling it a type flavor.
Okay.
Cost will definitely be a factor when you're looking at sourcing ingredients such as rose. Rose oil is very expensive.
Okay. Anything to add to that, Rebecca?
Yeah, no, that pretty much was it. We just have to use organic ingredients to create those type flavors. It obviously would not be a one-off. The difficulties with getting ingredients like rose sometimes falls into that. What I think Gwen talked about that as well, where sometimes those ingredients are really hard to source organically. It could just be on like when we have a bad crop that year or whatever. And sometimes then we can get where we prove that we tried to source it and that we couldn't, and then you can use a natural form of it. You have to jump through all those hoops and show all those 3 things that Gwen talked about, and that would be where it would definitely extend the certifiability on your flavor. So that would take months to get certification, because we have to go through a proving process showing that we can't just get rose oil organically.
And that may be why when we looked at some of the flavor trends, we see maybe the more traditional flavors in organic products. See a lot of chocolates, vanillas, things like that, as opposed to these fantasy flavors or the botanicals like rose, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. We did get another question in from the audience. One moment here. It says, I'm seeing a lot of food products mentioned today, but are there any differences in organic regulations or formulations for personal care products? Does the 95.5 rule still apply? And how do you manage things like flavor intensity or experience? So that's really for the whole group. I guess Sheila and Gwen, on the regulatory side, is there a difference if you're dealing with things like toothpaste or soap versus food on the regulatory side?
Yeah, so in the US, flavors are kind of regulated under an organization called FEMA, which is the Flavor and Extract Manufacturers Association, and the personal care is going to be more under IFRA, which is the Fragrance Association. So the regulations on what can be used in those individual products are a little bit different as far as flavors that can go into them. Some flavors that would be totally fine for ingestion, you wouldn't be okay if you put on the skin. But on an organic level, the organic standards are across the board. So nothing would change as far as if you were to have you could have 100% organic, you could have the organic, which would be 95.5, and then, the lesser as well.
Okay, and Sheila, within Canada?
Within Canada, it would be pretty much the same, with the exception, Gwen had mentioned the 100% organic. That's not something we can claim here anyhow. So
Okay.
as long as your flavor is organic certified, you should be good to go.
Okay, and then from, thank you. From a formulation perspective, if you're dealing with an organic toothpaste and the peppermint and things like that, are there implications on the formulation side, Rebecca or Sandra?
Yeah, so when we go to formulate that, like Gwen had mentioned, there are certain things that cannot be used, and even some of those FEMA GROS raw materials are, they're not versatile for both sides. So, and we have different levels that we can use them at. So it would be very important when you're contacting your supplier, your flavor supplier, that you let them know what the final product is, because we'd have to formulate and certify those flavors differently if they're for cosmetic or for the skin as ingestion or consumption. So those are totally different flavors that we have to build. And they would be, you couldn't use one necessarily. Sometimes you can, it just works out that way and you get lucky. But for the most part, something that is for ingestion or consumption cannot just be switched over to use on the cosmetic side, and vice versa.
Okay, Sandra, anything to add to that?
Nope, that was a good explanation.
Okay. We had one more question here. And so Sandra, if you can take this one, is flavor stability an issue with organic flavors?
Well, we always need to keep flavor stability in mind when creating any flavor. Creating an organic flavor is no different really than creating a conventional flavor. The difference is we might be limited in which solvents we can use, and because certain types of solvents help protect those flavor molecules that make the food taste good.
So then, Rebecca, within the manufacturing facility, are there any watchouts or cautions that we provide to customers about keeping flavor stability in place?
Yeah, sometimes just because, like she mentioned, we have to switch that solvent or carrier. So at times, like flashpoint or when you add it could be an issue. It would really be us working one-on-one with probably the R&D team of the product developers to make sure that we're delivering a flavor that will work in their product and whatever their processing is. Because of the restriction on solvents that we can and can't use for organic, we're pretty limited on what we can do, but we can give advice on different times of when they can add it, or maybe even just their use level.
Okay, very good. And we did get a question in from the audience that says, what would be the cost implications of using an organic flavor versus natural? Sandra, what's your perspective on that?
Well, there are limitations with some of the raw materials. Some of them aren't readily available, and some of them wouldn't be available in organic format. So some of the examples might be absolutes or oleoresins. These may or may not be allowed in organic products and may cause some changes in the flavor profile.
Okay. So it looks like this question was asking about cost. So is an organic flavor more costly than natural?
Yeah, so back to, again, the solvents or the carriers, when you compare each of those, the cost is quite different for organic versus conventional.
Okay. And Rebecca, I'm assuming that it's the same within the US as well, correct? That it's more costly on the organic side?
Yes, usually much more costly. Anything we jokingly say that needs more certification needs more money. But for, like she was saying, like those oily resins and things like that, if you're trying to match, if you're saying, hey, I have this natural flavor and I'd like it to be organic, we can't use those then. And so then we have to try to make up that flavor or that impact that we have to now remove with organics versions of it or something similar to it to build back that flavor that we have to remove. So those molecules that we can't use or those oily resins and things like that are absolutes. And that can be very costly. So
Okay.
that is where flavor impact, like the cost is going to be pretty high on those molecules.
All right, we did get another question that came in from the audience. It said, as you're talking about cost, I'm wondering, what is the violation or the fine for mislabeling non-certified products? And is there a difference between Canada and the US?
Yeah, so I recommend always getting your, T's crossed and your I's dotted first. Don't launch something that that's not completely certified on the market. Mainly because it can be, I don't know the exact number, and regulatory can chime in here in a minute, but it's definitely over like $10,000 to $20,000 fine. You are then also restricted, and your product would be, once you're declared that you're not organic and you've used the certified symbol, you'd have to recall all your products. You have to pay for that. And I think there is a time period then too where you can't get anything certified. You're kind of put on like this punishment hold until
almost like a watch list.
Any other product, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Sandra or Sheila, within Canada, do you have an idea of what the violation or the fine would be?
I don't know the cost, but I know they are quite extensive. And as it was mentioned, that you can also lose or be put on hold with your organic certification should you not comply.
Okay. So yes, word to the wise. Dot your I's and cross your T's.
Lisa, I was just curious to ask the group, is the stability issue any different going from a 95 organic claim to a 75 to a 70 to 95, or you still find the same stability issues?
Well, I feel like stability is always an issue with any, like she mentioned, I mean, that's a concern every time we are formulating a flavor. So that's something that's always kept in mind. The more concentrated the flavor, the more you risk that, but not any different than any other formulating, I would say.
Okay.
I would say the solvent systems, and Rebecca and Sandra, you can kind of chime in too, but the solvent systems will have to remain the same if it's a 95.5 or a 70%, just because that library you have to work for isn't going to be the same across the board, just because of the limitations that the NOP or CFIA provides.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Well, and that those were the last questions that have come in. So as we wrap up today, and we talked about, how do you navigate your way to a fast finish with organic NPD? And I know that we've talked about 10 days, 30 days. There's still planning involved to make sure that your product gets to market within your launch timetable. So our top line tips are to first study the course. And we talked about using data and your teams to plot the best way through, using insights and market information and your expertise on your team, and whether that's your internal team or your vendor community, your suppliers. It's important too that you know the rules of engagement, and we spent quite a bit of time talking about that today. So working with your regulatory team or the team on your ingredient partnerships to understand the requirements for organic products so that you don't face any challenges from consumers or the regulatory bodies. And then lastly, making sure you have the right gear. So that's finding ingredient sources and suppliers who've already done the legwork for you, so you can confidently ensure that you're equipped to succeed once you get to market. So that concludes the conversation that we have today. Thank you so much for participating, and thank you to our panelists for your contribution. We have a really bright team here. After you click out of the webinar, you will receive a 3-question survey, and I would be very grateful if you take a moment to answer it. I timed it, it's less than a minute. It will help us understand the type of information that would be useful to you going forward from both an innovation perspective as well as from Flavours. And so with that, I will say thank you to everyone and have a great afternoon from Bonnie and Don and National Flavours.